Hi everyone, it's Cindy. Welcome back to Studioloo. So today on this Wander with Beatrix Potter, we are going to jump in and talk a little bit about Mr. McGregor from the story of Peter Rabbit, and then we're going to go through Two Bad Mice all the way up to Beatrix's life when she moves to Hilltop. So another little kind of stage of her life today that we're going to cover, and then we'll get into doing some fun ephemera or something. So more about Mr. McGregor. Although numerous gardens claim to be Mr. McGregor's garden, no single definite location has ever been established. In response to her readers' inquiries, Beatrix Potter herself wrote that the backgrounds of Peter Rabbit are a mixture of locality and that Mr. McGregor was no special person. All that is certain is that Beatrix loved gardens. So this is another gardener here, Mr. Jesse Buckland, 1912. He's just here because I guess he's a good depiction of Mr. McGregor. This is a rare glimpse of Mrs. McGregor in the tale of Flopsy, the Flopsy Bunnies. Where is Mrs. McGregor? Oh, wow. Yeah, she's just her little bonnet there. Just a little glimpse of her, the back of her head. Mr. McGregor's roots. So his name and his tam o' shanter suggest Mr. McGregor must have been Scottish. Beatrix was on vacation in Scotland when she first wrote the Peter Rabbit story, and the house where she was staying was rented for the summer from a man called Mr. McGregor. Beatrix drew this rabbit in 1891, 2 years before the Peter Rabbit letter, while staying at Baldwell Lodge, Herefordshire. Beatrix sketched all kinds of gardens on her travels. Large country houses had kitchen gardens for vegetables, fruits, and flowers for the table, with high walls to keep out winds and intruders. They also had formal gardens landscaped with trees, lawns, and ponds. Cottage gardens were smaller but packed with blooms. Some had separate plots for fruits and vegetables. Beatrix first saw Mr. McGregor's lily pond and cat when she stayed in Tenby, Wales in April of 1900. So there's a couple of pictures here. Wall at Melford Hall in Suffolk, where Beatrix stayed with her cousins. Mrs. McGregor's pie. So Mr. McGregor's wife appears only 3 times in Beatrix Potter's 23 tales. Once encountered, never forgotten. In the first tale, Peter's mother warns her children, "Don't go into Mr. McGregor's garden. Your father had an accident there. He was put in a pie by Mrs. McGregor." So yeah, she's not a character that we really want to come across too much, right? Beatrix Potter knew that gardeners have to work hard all through the year to grow food to eat and flowers to admire. Here is a reminder from Mr. McGregor about just some of the essential tasks that keep him busy throughout the tales, from winter right through to the fall. The last thing he needs is another visit from Peter Rabbit and Benjamin Bunny. So this is like a little, seasonal, what things Mr. McGregor needs to do. In spring, we plant out our seedlings in the garden, use a dibber to punch holes in the ground, put up a scarecrow to keep greedy blackbirds away. So yeah, just a bit of a schedule there for him. So then we hop over to Two Bad Mice, another of the lovely stories written by Beatrix Potter. So this is a mouse-sized dustpan brush. How cute is that? Tom Thumb and Hunca Munca, the 2 bad mice, explore a beautiful doll's house and get up to mischief while the dolls are away. They were named after 2 of Beatrix Potter's pets. The doll's house was based on one of her editor, Norman Warren, built for his niece, Winifred. Norman also made a special mouse house for the real Hunca Munca with a glass side so that Beatrix could watch and draw her. Beatrix was invited to visit the Warrens to sketch Winifred's new dollhouse, but Mrs. Potter disapproved of Beatrix going to their house. She wrote to apologize. "My mother is so exacting, it does wear a person out." So that Beatrix could finish her sketches, Norman sent her photographs instead. So Beatrix Potter's mother sounds quite strict. Winifred Warren and the doll's house made by her father, Norman Warren, in 1904, by her uncle, the kind of house where one cannot sit down without upsetting something, Beatrix said. "I know the sort." Oh, wow, I know the sort too. It takes you back to the days, of like a lot of our grandparents or parents, where they had those formal front rooms. Like, it wasn't quite a living room, it was more a sitting room. And you know, as kids, there were, like, you couldn't touch anything. Things were in china cabinets and they would jiggle if you jumped around. And I have many memories of those kind of places that were like my grandparents or my aunts and uncles' homes, to some degree my own parents a little bit, but not so much. Yeah. Not so fun when you're a kid. The doll's house belongs to two dolls, Lucinda and Jane. They buy their food ready-made, as the two bad mice are about to find out. The real Hunca-Munca liked her new house. I stopped her in the act of carrying a doll as large as herself up to the nest, Beatrix told Norman. She cannot resist anything with lace or ribbon. She despises the dishes. And this is like little miniature cutlery for dolls, or hungry mice, dolls, house food from Hamley's. For inspiration, Norman sent Beatrix 2 dolls, and then some furniture, and food from a London toy store, Hamley's. I received the parcel from Hamley's this morning, she wrote back. The ham's appearance is enough to cause indigestion. I'm getting almost more treasures than I can squeeze into one small book. The mice discover the doll's food is rock hard and stuck to the plates. They hurl it to the floor. Bang, bang, smash, smash. So funny. So Hunca-Munca has a frugal mind. With Tom Thumb's assistance, she takes some odds and ends from the doll's house. Not so naughty after all. Beatrix ends her tale by reconciling her reader's sense of justice to her character's true nature. Mice can't help being mice. So the little girl who owns the doll's house gets a policeman doll like Winifred's to guard against future burglars. Her nurse sets a mouse trap. The mice, though unrepentant, find a way to show the dolls their gratitude. Beatrix later got a doll's house of her own and filled it with furniture for two bad mice, plus miniature portraits of Winifred and her sister. So here we have the dollhouse. So Two Bad Mice write to Andrew Fell. Dear Drew, this is love from lots of little mice sent by Tom Thumb and Hunca-Munca. And that's the original letter there. How cute is that? I also love the name Hunca-Munca. I would love to know the backstory of that. So now we move a little out of the books and more into Beatrix's life. 1905 was an important year for Beatrix Potter. Now that she was earning a regular income from her books, she decided to buy a house of her own. She chose a farm called Hilltop in the Lake District village of near Surrey. The same year, her publisher, Norman Warren, with whom she had worked closely on all her books, asked her to marry him. Beatrix was very happy to accept. Her life seemed to change. So cute. So this is the front door key for Hilltop and an old coin that Beatrix found there. Beatrix first got to know Surrey in 1896 when she and her family spent the summer at Lakefield, a house on the edge of the village. She thought Surrey was as nearly perfect a little place as I ever lived in. Hilltop would provide her with an escape from her parents' house and with inspiration for her next books. She sketched her new house in 1905. Later, she added a wing for the previous tenants, the Cannons, who stayed on to look after the farm for her. Beatrix found these marbles in a wall while renovating Hilltop. She kept them with a note that explains she also found a George III coin on the front door key box. For 100 years or so, the coin had prevented anyone from turning the key to lock the door. That's so cool. Beatrix was allowed to wear Norman's ring, but not to announce her engagement, which appalled her parents. In their eyes, he was her social inferior. Publishing was a trade, not a profession, so the son of a publisher was an unsuitable match for the daughter of a lawyer. Besides, if Beatrix married, who would look after them in their old age? Ah, the true motive comes out. Yeah. Ah, look at this. Beautiful, beautiful. To figure out how to use this one. I've used the other two. I may use it in the same way. We'll see. On August 25th, 1 month after Norman had proposed to Beatrix, he died from sudden illness, age 37. I believe it was leukemia. Beatrix was devastated and hid herself away to work on her next book, The Tale of Mrs. Tiggy Winkle. As she explained to Harold Warren, Norman's brother, and now her editor, I feel as if my work and your kindness will be my greatest comfort. Beatrix drew Bedford Square, London, at dusk while staying with the Warrens after Norman's death. This is Hilltop at night in the snow. Hilltop today, the village of Near Surrey, lies just behind the trees, with Esthwaite Water and Langdale Pike Hills beyond. And this is another sketch from her sketchbook in 1905 of Hilltop. From now on, Beatrix spent as much time as possible at Surrey, overseeing the renovations to Hilltop. She told Millie Warren, Norman's sister and her close friend, that the house really is delightful if the rats could be stopped out, and added that Tabitha Twitchett, the farm cat, is so extremely pleased to see me, I am afraid she is pleased not to see the hedgehog, Mrs. Potter's pet, Mrs. Tiggy, which she disliked. So, yeah, lots of stuff there. And I guess then after this we get into, I think, Peter Rabbit's world, which I probably won't go through like in a lot of detail because it's really focused around the whole Peter Rabbit story, and I think we've gotten into that. There will be more about Mrs. Tiggy Winkle. I think we will cover Mrs. Tiggy Winkle, but we will skip that bit on Peter's world. I don't think we need to do that. I have to be a little selective or else we're going to be here for the rest of our lives. So this I want to use, I think, as a piece of like stationery again, in the same way that I use the other ones. It's too big for the little journal, so it'll have to go, I think, in the scrapbooks. Although I could fold it and we could put one of these in the little journal. That might be quite nice. So I'll try to trim it down as best I can here. I want to keep as much of this as possible because it's so charming. So if I get the little book, let's move some things. I know I'm doing an awful lot of shuffling in these videos. I have to, I have this little table beside my desk, and I have my drum carder on it right now because I was carding some wool, and I need to move it so I can, yes, that will be beautiful. It'll be fine. Okay. So we will make a folded stationery page with that one. So I'll just set that aside because we know what we're doing with it. I'll get the cutter out of the way. Okay, so I guess first we'll go back to where we started here. So we got into Mr. McGregor. There were some things left over from Benjamin Bunny and things about the bunnies, but I think we'll focus over here with Mr. McGregor. So we have a couple Mr. McGregor pages and a couple Too Bad Mice. So I think I'm more interested in the Too Bad Mice stuff than anything else, really. So let's make some Too Bad Mice things. Let me think about mice and what I may have in my studio to enrich the experience of mice. I don't think I have too much. I do have like some collage books that may have some mice and things, but we may not need them. There's quite a bit to work with. So I think I'll do what I did before, which is splitting the assets between the pages, one for each scrapbook. So I think here I'm going to go with obviously this little mouse. I want to make a little, I think, yeah, I want to make something with this. I love what it talks about here. First of all, I love the picture of the dollhouse, but I also love how they talk about the house being like one where, you know, you can't sit down without knocking something over. I love that as a concept. We'll take this little mouse here. These little ones. And that little dollhouse. We may even use these bits actually as some decoration because it's mice and, you know, what are they there for? Food, right? Then over here, of course, with Mr. McGregor, I'm going to grab this bit of garden-y kind of stuff, because we can stick that in randomly somewhere, I think, as a glue down. I'm not going to get into the dolls. I don't need to do that. Okay, so these are the assets for one of the books. And then for this book, this stuff. And I think this big dollhouse would be a pretty cool pocket, but I can't use the whole entire thing. I'd like to maybe trim it down a little. Yeah, I think I'll do that. You know what? No, I know what I'm going to do with that. It's a secret. It's not. You're going to find out in just a minute. This little bird cage that refused to go into the mouse hole. Okay, that's cute. And I think I will take her little note that she did. Those three things. And then I'm going to make a little thing with the key and the coin that she found at Hilltop. Then, what shall we do with this page? Okay, so, Mr. McGregor. I don't think I really need much here, to be honest. I've covered a good amount, I think, of Mr. McGregor in the Peter Rabbit story already. I'm going to, though, because I'm clearly not going to waste these things, I want to keep some things here as random bits and bobs to put in the book. So the first will be this letter from Benjamin to Peter, and the second is this little bunny picture here. Those are both great, and I do like this kitty cat sitting on the top of the basket. You know, Benjamin's inside there. He's stuck. The kitty cat's sitting on the basket. Benjamin Bunny is in there, and he's crying because his eyes are burning from the smell of onions, which are in that same shed that he's in. Okay, so I think that concludes what I'm going to keep from that page. So the random things that aren't part of this Too Bad Mice situation, I'm just going to set them in my bin of like stuff generally for this book. So let's do this stuff first. So my plan here is I want to create a flip out with this, because it's a nice big piece of paper, right? I don't want to use it as a pocket. I want it to be a little more dynamic than that. That's a little thin. Hunting through paper. Speaking of which, paper. I've been so super busy with my husband. We've been dyeing some really beautiful papers, and I've got like some new alchemy going on. If you follow me on Instagram or Etsy, you'll see the papers there. I don't have them on hand right now. I put everything away. But I have lots of new paper packs in the shop, and they're really lovely. Also, for those of you who are tuning in here along the journey with me, I will talk to you a little bit about, just generally speaking, what's happening in my Etsy shop, and also my Patreon and my Ko-fi shops. So for the month of May, from now until the 15th of May, all digitals in my Etsy shop are going to be 30% off. Then after that sale concludes, I will be archiving several of my digital collections off of Etsy. However, the large collections will still be available for probably more reflective of that 30% off price forever afterward. In my Patreon and Ko-fi shops, both of those pages, I'll have the large collections. Then for the small collections, and the reason that I even have a Ko-fi shop, so if you are one of my Patreons or you're interested in my Patreon, if you have subscribed at a tier where you get my digitals, I create for all tiers of my Patreon, I create digitals. But for the larger digital collections that I do put up on Etsy, those go to just my, I think second tier and up get those. Yeah, it's just the first tier that doesn't. So I put those sometimes, and I'm going to start trying to do that for a fee on my Ko-fi. So my Patreons get them for free, but on Ko-fi you can, support me there, buy me a coffee, and you can get a digital. And they're lower price. They're like, some smaller collections, 1 or 2 pages, sometimes a little more, special little things. Sometimes on my travels I find some cool vintage things and I scan them, antique papers and stuff. Or I do some art and I scan it, and I share it in that way. So that is how things are going to work. The reason I am going to archive some of my digitals from Etsy is because when you sell on Etsy, you've got to be very sort of smart and careful about how you do so, because Etsy does charge a recurring monthly or every couple months, I can't remember, a fee regardless, to allow people to post their things on their website. So whether things are selling or not, I pay for them, right? So I have to be a little judicious about how long I let something sit in my Etsy shop. If it hasn't sold a lot recently, then it's going to the archive on Patreon and Ko-fi, where I can still keep it there for you if you're interested in getting it, but it won't just be sitting on Etsy costing me, right? So it's a little more manageable for me. I kind of wish they wouldn't just charge listing fees over and over again. I wish they would just do the charging that they do on my sales, which is already quite extensive, unfortunately. It's hard to be a creator, an artist, especially trying to sell your goods in a way that doesn't hurt you. I think economic times right now make it a little hard for artists. Well, not a little, a lot. It's hard for everybody, but it's definitely tough for artists. So if you ever wonder why people have started to create things like Ko-fi pages and Patreon, and if you don't really get it and you have questions, I'm happy to answer those in any video. You can just leave me a comment and let me know, and I'll address it in a future video, or possibly in a comment to you, because I think sometimes people get so accustomed to the idea of free. Everything's on YouTube for free. What you don't realize is the costs associated with that free stuff you're getting on YouTube. It has to be covered somehow, right? Everybody needs to make a living. So the time we spend making videos and doing all of this, it's this is why, for me, my biggest reason I like making books and I like selling books. I've always had a creative business, and that's what I like doing. So I will always continue to do that. But I do also think that sometimes you do need to do a little bit more than just that, and it's nice to have supporters. Patreon is, I think, my favorite of all of the options, really, because it allows me to have this space where I can share more with my community, a little more openly, and that's always a nice thing. So I'm trying to figure out where I want to put this page. I think here. I kind of like the colors on this page with that. So this is going to be a flip. We're going to glue this flap down and it will be a little tip in, so that you can do some writing back here. This is some of my hand-dyed paper. And then we'll continue on this page with the rest of the little artifacts that we've scavenged from this book on Too Bad Mice. Okay. But Patreon itself is a lovely place. As a creator, I do quite enjoy it. I do enjoy having it. I find it a little hard to understand, am I doing everything okay? Because it's hard to get engagement from people on Patreon sometimes, because I think I don't know. A lot of people like to subscribe quietly to things and just enjoy what the creator does, and that's totally fine. But every time like somebody joins or they need to leave, it's like you sort of go through these little existential crises. Like, am I doing enough? Did I do something wrong? Like, I'm, and I read these forums all the time about Patreon, and people say, like, if somebody leaves your Patreon, should you send them a note to ask them why, or to, try to sort out if you can address why they might have left or something. And I definitely was feeling that way at first, but then I did a bunch of reading and found that it's actually quite common. And people, they can choose to fill out an exit survey. And for me, whenever anyone has left my Patreon, and I'm being very transparent here because I think it's nice to just share creator experience. I'm not really like embarrassed or worried about doing so. I like to be a transparent kind of person. I do get sad, but then I look at the reasons, and most people just write, my financial situation has changed, and that I could not at all commiserate more with. I've been, in the ups and downs of I'm still in the ups and downs of my life. I'm still kind of, I think we're mostly all kind of in the ups and downs these days economically, right? So it's one of those things, but that's also why I try to support, the people that I love on Patreon, because it's like one of these things, right? So often you hear, and it's the same reason that I sponsor a child in the Philippines, because it literally is like your coffee money, I think for $1 a day, or for, $5 a month or something, right? $10 a month, even 20, even 100, depending on who you are and what your life is like. I think we all have different amounts of money that we do and don't have to think about. And, but I think when you can, it's nice to be a patron of the arts. I've always felt like I want to support people as much as I can. And I also, as a creator, I really enjoy giving people, I love when you guys tell me how you had a nice morning watching my video, or you had someone recently wrote me, and it was so sweet that they had a little binge watch party with their friend on a little friend date. And I just thought that was the sweetest thing, how utterly lovely to think that you can be a reason why people get together, and that this is how they spend their casual time, just kind of having fun, maybe making some food and hanging out and just watching your videos. That's really the best, I think. Okay, so we've got the key here. I want to do a tuck spot, I think, with this, and then I'll use that as a journal card. I think we'll do that. Just try to cut this a little straighter than what I did initially here. There we go. And then maybe we'll ink it with a bit of blue. Oops. There we go. But I think it's interesting, to talk about just kind of like an artist and, how you're doing, because it's like at this stage of Beatrix Potter's life, she was finding her place in the world, right? She was finally published. She'd saved some money. She was able to buy her first home. How rewarding it must have been to also escape the control of your parents a little bit, because it seems like she was being held back in some ways by her mother, especially. My understanding with her father, both of her parents were artists, but her father, they said in some of the things that I've been watching and reading, that he treated her as more of an equal than what her mother did. Her mother kind of was a little more harsh with her. Not harsh, but strict. But her father was very good to her. Okay. So there's that. Hunka Munka has a frugal mind. With Tom Thumb's assistance, she takes odds and ends from the doll's house. That's really cute. Then where did I put... now that I think about it... Hold on. I'm having second thoughts now about Now that I said that, the Hunka Munka, is it on this page? No. All right, bear with me. I'm looking for something. This page, no. I was looking for that bird cage. Maybe it's on the back of something else I've cut though. Let me see. Is it on the back of one of these? I don't believe so. No. Maybe it was on the back of one of these. It's not on Beatrix. It's amazing how you can misplace something and it like makes no sense how you misplaced it. That is me 100% of the time. Okay, so let's put this in here as a little secret tuck-in. Lots of writing space. This flips over, the key peeks out. Just going to kind of give this a little gentle rub because I think there's a tiny little glue there. There we go. Just on that edge. My neighbors had a party last night. They erected this huge tent in their backyard. We were kind of worried, like, oh no, is this going to be a crazy weekend party? But it wasn't. It was their baby's first birthday yesterday. So I got, we got together last night, my family, we kind of put together a little present for him. We didn't know it was his birthday. And so, yeah, I had to hop over there. He's the cutest little thing. Okay, so that is that book. I think that's settled, right? We've got this page. Let me just make sure. Yeah, I'm happy with it. I don't think it needs a whole lot of fussing. I may end up like doing some stenciling or stamping, but I'm not going to do that at this stage. That will come, that's in one of my finishing kind of steps. So that folio will go into volume 2. Now we'll grab volume 1 and we'll make the page for it. Okay. This signature, I think we're still in this signature. Okay, so there is our, yep. Good, there's our Taylor of Gloucester page. Squirrel Nutkin page. Is this just a plain paper? It is. Why don't we do something on it for a center spread? I'm so surprised I left any blank center spreads. I rarely do that. It's usually that I put something like fancy in the middle or something different. But I do like that this will give us a bit of an opportunity. So this I want to make almost a cabinet card with, I think, with the little explanation. This we need to fussy cut out our little mouse friend here. Okay. And then this little real mouse. Mice are so cute. I used to have little mice when I was a kid. I had a whole menagerie of them because so pretty early in my life, I learned that pet stores were not a good thing. So I didn't really shop at them after I was maybe 8 years old, maybe 9. I used to sometimes get little things like hamsters, you know, I'd be able to get, and so I had a few of those kind of things, but then I learned that pet stores weren't so good, so I didn't get any more of those kind of things. So I then met this lady who had her own, so she raised birds and like different kinds of birds, from pigeons to ducks to geese. She was quite industrious bird person, and she was a farmer, and she used to show her birds, and she also had small mammals like rabbits and things. And so I got some of my pets from her, and I always loved having little animals, but mice are very gentle little creatures. They're so sweet and gentle and kind, and I ended up getting one from her who, as it turns out, was pregnant. So she had 3 babies, and then I had 4 mice, and they all lived together quite happily in their little nest. I had a really large cage for them. It was like a 2-level cage that was actually quite large. It was like big, like a parrot cage or something. But my dad, he's a woodworker and has an engineer's brain, so my dad would build these ladders and these platforms. So it's like we took a large bird cage that they got from somewhere and turned it into this like crazy big hamster, situation, and they did really well, the little mice. Let me see. I'm going to just cut this out. I don't want the explanation. I do have many doll books. I could add a doll in here if we wanted to add a doll. Okay. So, I think this, it says, the mice discover that the doll's food is rock hard and stuck to the plates. They hurl it to the floor, bang, bang, smash. So I think I'm going to make a pocket with that and with these all like together. So let's get a bit of this thin folder here, and we'll glue these down together. But a couple years ago, we live in a bit of a suburban area at the moment, and we do have a nice back garden, but we did have an issue with mice and also rats for a little while, because unfortunately that's what happens when a neighborhood is built. All the little animals, from foxes to raccoons to possums to mice and rats, who people often don't realize are just as common as squirrels. They're everywhere. But people get really worried that, like, if they see rats, like, the area is bad or something, and that's not the case at all. It's like kind of a weird superstition. So we ended up, like, it's really hard to know what to do when you have those kind of things hanging about, because you don't want them hanging about at all, because they can get into your home. They can, my house is brick, so I do stand far less chance of that. They can chew wiring around your home, and they can definitely decimate a garden. So for the first sort of season of this, when we were noticing them, it was because they were digging in my garden. And at first I thought we had moles, and we didn't, because I got these mole things that make sounds that drive the moles away. It's like a vibration that only moles can hear, but it didn't work. There was still digging going on. And then we saw our first rat, and I was like, oh no. So we had to do a cleanup program, essentially. At home, whenever we would use the barbecue, we'd clean it up. And then when you do that, you fully kind of proof your backyard of things that a rat would like, so you don't leave, and rats like the weirdest things, anything from animal droppings, believe it or not, to any kind of grease from a barbecue, food scrap of any kind, of course, as well as bulbs. They're just like squirrels in that they love eating bulbs and things like that. Bird seed, definitely, but we were able to keep our feeder. And then the biggest thing is that we have these raised garden beds that were quite deep. And it's a big reason why I've gone from these wooden beds to the new steel ones that I've put in this year. And I've laid stone, so there's no way for them to dig a nest. They can't really hide anywhere. So now my backyard's totally unappealing to them, so they're gone. They've been gone for about 2 years though, because some changes that I made really got rid of them. And we only saw them for, I'd say, 1 season, like not even a full year. We didn't see them outside of, I would say, the autumn of last year. But we've had live traps. But see, the trouble is, it's hard to know, as somebody who's trying to be ethical and leave wildlife alone, what to do, because you can't keep these guys around in your backyard. You really shouldn't. It's not a good idea. as some people that I do know have learned that, you know, they thought they were cute, but yeah, it didn't end up cute at all, because they can actually be a fire hazard if they're chewing your wiring. So when you live trap them, you know, then what, right? It's like you can't just take them somewhere else because of two things. One, they probably won't survive anyways. If you take them and you just drop them off somewhere, you know, maybe you've caused them to abandon their babies. Like there's lots of issues. But then also, when you take your rat and you drop it somewhere else, you've made it someone else's problem. So I have a friend who's a farmer, and she's got a much, I would say, more 4-H upbringing than me. I was born of the bleeding heart, I guess. I don't know. I wasn't actually, but I just, you know, I am that way. Sometimes to my own deficit, but, you know, it's hard to know what to do. So, like, I didn't really want to deal with it that way, but then we noticed that we don't know who, but one of our neighbors probably was putting out something poisonous, because my beagle almost ate a rat one day on the road. When he was on his walk, he picked it up in his mouth. It was the scariest thing. It was very hard for my husband to deal with because he wouldn't let it go. He was just being a complete hunting dog about it. So my husband had to really reef it out of his mouth, and it was just a total nightmare. It was dead, but, you know, when you see a dead rat that doesn't have any kind of reason, like it doesn't look like it was hit by a car or taken down by a bird, then probably you want to think poison. So obviously we took my dog to the vet, had a whole poison kind of regimen done to just monitor him, and then we had some medicine that was given to us in case we did need to quickly flush his stomach. And also we live right down the road from our vet, so at the time we did. So yeah, that was scary, but somebody else has been taking care of the problem, which I fully support, and I'm doing my part by making sure that my backyard is not an attractor for them. So yeah, that situation is now under control, but we did have some mice on the first year, and the thing about mice is they have a little bit more predictable breeding season, and usually if you get them early enough, you actually can transport them to a wood, and they don't have such an issue living because they're little industrious creatures. So we did clear out some mice at the same time, the same year, with peppermint oil. So basically they don't like peppermint oil a whole lot, but they're attracted to the smell, and we got them all to go. They literally would walk right across my backyard in this little lineup. It was the funniest, most cartoonish thing, and they walked onto this little platform that went up and into a bucket, and they would fall into the bucket. So there were about 6 of them in total, and we took them off to a foresty kind of far off area, and they were gone. And I do recognize that, you know, that still could potentially make them the farmer's problem who has land near there or something like that, but they would already be there anyways, right? So yeah, that whole situation saved my garden and made it so that, like, we didn't have to worry about that kind of thing. But now we don't have to worry about it because we've learned, and we now do all the things that you should do as a responsible homeowner with a backyard garden. And I think most people don't really like to even think about having to deal with it because, you know, it does require that every time you barbecue, you go out and you clean up your mess once your barbecue has cooled, and that is a bit of effort, but it's really worthwhile when you know you're not confusing the animals and making them hang about. And also having stone in my backyard rather than having so much grass has been a really great thing too, because they don't like to be in little stones. I think it's hard for them to walk in. So we have mostly stone in our backyard now, and pathway stone and little stones in between. And so there's really nowhere for them to go. They can't dig through the steel garden bed or anything. So it's actually quite nice. And it's also good for the irrigation of your plants. Like all my gardens are they're already just thriving, and I'm happy about that. I have a couple more I need to install. I'm planning to try to do that this weekend. I get so just distracted with things. Why isn't this sticking? I need better glue on this. I don't know. Just glue this here. There we go. I think it was just that maybe my hand is a little sticky and the mouse isn't sure if it wants to stick to my hand or to the paper. There we go. Okay, now let's corner round this with my 1/4 inch. Okay. Alrighty, so that is that. That's so cute. I might put a little label on here. Something a little collagey. I did some fussy cutting yesterday and actually, that's good. Cut out lots of labels and things. So I've replenished my label stash. Okay. There we go. All right, I'm happy with this little page. Let's put it back in the book, in the center. And there's definitely more that can be done on this, because this side is still quite blank. But this is cute. I really like this as a center spread. Very sweet. What I could do on this is just add these little seed packets that are also from the same part of the book. More in the vein of Mr. McGregor though. But it gives me a nice little glue down. So there's that. Then getting some scraps here. This is an old 1913 book cover. Yeah, let's do that. It's really cool. Ink these with a bit of green, and actually let me get this page. It is too sticky. That'll give us like a little transition into the next page. Alright, so that is that. Make sure it's not sticky. It's not. Okay. So then the next thing I want to do is this big enough? No. I need to find some packaging paper and I don't have any handy. So the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to back this with packaging paper and then fold it into a piece of stationery. I'm probably going to stitch around, and that's going to go in the little book. So that I think concludes my work for today for right now. I'll see you next time on this Wander with Beatrix Potter. I hope you enjoyed, and we'll talk soon. Bye for now.